Thank you all for coming today. Really appreciate it. Thank you for putting up with the delay as we get started. Welcome to those of you who are in the room, and welcome to those of you who are watching us virtually. My name is Camille Kalatasti. I'm the Dean for Institutional Assessment and Graduate Studies. This is the second session in a series that we plan to offer in order to share some information about the teaching and the curriculum that we have here at Berkeley Boston, and to share that with our faculty here on this campus, as well as with our partners around the world, especially our faculty at the Berkeley Valencia campus, the faculty and directors at the schools in our Berkeley International Network, and with other institutions with whom we have articulation agreements. One of our goals in creating these sessions is to really just increase the communication between ourselves and our partners, and to share as much information as we can. This event is being live streamed and will be available for review afterwards, as well on the berkeley.edu Academic Affairs website. I want to give a special welcome to those of you who are watching us virtually, and I do apologize that you're unable to share the food with us. We have plenty to go around, and I hope to be able to share a meal with you sometime in the future. Many people have worked very hard to pull this event together and to get all of the technology to work. So I want to give them a special thanks. So please join me in thanking Mary McClory, Ernie Gillis, Giles Christensen, Chi Ping Ho, Reggie Lofton, Tim Paul Wiener, and Dave Wentland and his production team. We're very grateful for all of your work. While you're eating, we're going to be hearing from our presenters, and then we do hope that we have a few minutes at the end of the session for people to ask questions. If it turns out that we're running a little long, we might cut that question portion, but the speakers will be available for you after the filming ends. Our goal is to finish this session by a few minutes before the hour, so that those of you who are teaching will be able to go to your classes. Today's session focuses on MTEC-111, Introduction to Music Technology, the core foundational technology course required of all Berkeley undergraduate students and a component of almost all of Berkeley's articulation agreements. We're going to be hearing from two people who are expert in that class, Michael Barillo, who's the chair of the Electronic Production and Design Department, and Kai Turnbull, who's an associate professor in that department. To introduce them, I am very pleased to introduce their dean, the Dean of the Professional Writing and Music Technology Division, Kari Usila. Please join me in welcoming him to the stage.
Hello, welcome for you here and virtually. I'm not going to take up much time in talking about this, but I will introduce our two presenters, who are both amazing music technologists, and nobody better than them to put together a program for our students who music technology, it's more and more important and a bigger and bigger part of their career. So they will talk about the course, which is the foundation, as Camille said, for all of their training and the majors. So the first is Michael Barillo, who is the chair of electronic production and design. He's an amazing musician, technologist, and educator. And along with him is Kai Turnbull, and although he looks much younger, I heard one of our faculty members took this course from him almost 20 years ago. I don't think that's possible, but anyway, Kai is an amazing technologist and a great teacher, and so the two of them are going to present on the program, so welcome and enjoy. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Camille, and thank you, Kari, and welcome everybody. The first thing I'd like to say about MTEC-111 is that our thinking about this course comes from the place that we realize we are all joined at the hip to technology. Our fate is with technology, and it always has been. If we did not have the Industrial Revolution, we would not have the technology tools available to us to make a piano or a flute. if we did not have the printing press, I don't know how composers would be making a living these days. The phonograph, the idea that an individual instrumental performer could go out and make a living without showing up to the gig was a pretty revolutionary idea. And so that's the point of departure for this particular class. And we at Berklee realized that this is an important part of what students do. And about 20 years ago, Gary Burton kind of figured this out and said, you know, we really need to have a course that will equip our students with some basic ideas behind music technology. And that was the genesis of MTEC-111. And that was pretty cool, the idea that we had took students all through various aspects of technology. Well, 20 years ago, most of our students and most of our professionals in the field didn't have a lot of hands-on access to the tools of technology. 20, 25 years ago, if you were going to make any music, you would go into a studio, more or less. Well, that has changed very quickly, and in 2002, I believe, we started a program where every student at Berklee got a laptop computer, a bundle of software, and some music-making hardware. And at that point, MTEC-111 really kicked into high gear, and it became a course where we really were talking about how to empower students to do technology, not just to learn about technology. So a few things. First of all, why MTEC-111? One of the things we realize is that technology impacts everybody's professional life. So we want to make sure that all our students are equipped with some very basics to do technology. And at Berklee, there are a number of majors that are technology heavy, but also just about anybody who is doing anything with music is going to be using technology these days. The next thing is we want to anticipate the changes that will impact musicians. So one of the things that we think about in framing and revising the course are not necessarily the things that are happening right now, but thinking ahead and what will a student be doing when they graduate. And that's a moving target, but it's something that we really try and consider in framing the course. Another thing that we do, and it really goes without saying, that we want to provide core success skills for students with technology. As soon as students get here to Berklee in the core, they are working with technology in their classes. One of the ways we have supported that is in an ear training exercise, a thing that happens in about week 3, we ask students to start singing into their computers. So at very early stages of their time here at Berklee, they're using the computer. And so the goal is to get everybody up and running with the computer here at Berklee. The other thing that we want to really think about with student success is the idea that at Berklee we have this electronic culture. And everybody is part of an electronic culture. When students get here, they're probably part of several electronic cultures, certainly through Facebook, through text messages, through chats. But we want to introduce them to the idea that being a student here at Berklee is being connected to a Berklee network, communicating, managing their course materials, submitting their coursework, so that when students get out of this course, they should be able to go into any class at Berklee, and a faculty member should feel comfortable that their students are able to fully make use of the learning management tools that we have here. And what this also leads us to is the direct support of one of our most loved acronyms around here, the BLAP, the Berklee Laptop Purchase Program. So as I said earlier, students, when they come to Berklee, really are coming in and they're getting a core set of tools. The first is an Apple MacBook Pro computer, and with that we have an audio interface that they are currently getting. We also have a suite of software that will include Microsoft Office, Pro Tools, Finale, Reason, Digital Performer, and FileMaker, as well as Smart Music Studio. And we have Bruce Bennett in the audience today, and if I do make a mistake, I think Bruce will be right there to say yes. Okay, thumbs up from Bruce Bennett. Thank you, Bruce. One of the things we want to do is see what types of software students will most likely be using in their classes, and then get them up and running with the software. So I think that for us has been a very important part of what we do. Now I'm going to switch out of here just for a second and just to take a look at ol.berklee. And this is, again, I should be seeing this, right? ol.berklee. Okay, I can pedal for a bit, I'll just talk about this for a second. Our online management system, course management system here at Berkeley, really is a place where we can put the entire syllabus for the course. We put the assignments for the course. This is a place where students are able to get definitive answers to what they're responsible for in the course. And it's also a portal that they can use to support adding things to the course. So when they submit their work, when their work is done, they submit it on the course. In addition, in MTEC-111, all the content that we use in the course is in OL. So it exists really, the entire, shall we say, textbook for the course is in OL. And over the years, we've looked at many different texts for the course, and we really thought that we would be best served really by coming up with our own course content, and that's what we have done. And I have Chi Ping here helping me. There we go. That's the one thing that we didn't check in our check. Awesome. You want to do it? You know, why don't we do this? Why don't we cycle over to my colleague here, Kai Turnbull, and I think one of the things that we do in MTEC-111 is we really talk about the computer, and we talk about the computer as a tool, as an appliance, but we talk about it in a way that we feel that students should learn how to be responsible for the computer, how to configure it, how to troubleshoot it. So I think what Kai's going to do now is talk for us a little bit about the basic configuration that every student would use to produce some music.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Michael, for the introduction, and Carrie and Camille. So what I wanted to talk about was one of the first activities that occur in the class. As Michael mentioned, all students are receiving specific hardware. In the case in this case, an Apple Macintosh laptop computer, an audio interface, and also the PACE iLock, which is used for licensing for security of applications like Pro Tools and Propellerhead's Reason. So one of the first activities we do in the classroom is actually have students run through and physically connect the devices and then run through the software diagnostics that ensure that when you launch a music application, it indeed is recognizing the hardware that you have physically connected to the computer. So I'll skip over to the classroom environment here. So where I'm teaching currently in the blended class is in room 310, the 7 Haviland Street. And as you can see, in addition to a student bringing in their laptop and their audio interface and their iLock, we in fact have a 2-octave USB controller. So that fits into the configuration requirements that the student would actually have to participate in during the first few lessons. In lesson 2 and lesson 3, they'll run through this diagnostic test. So I'm going to do this for you in real time. The objectives for this, for the students' learning experience, is that they'll develop good workflow methods, that they'll take on the problem-solving skills that's required when configuring their system. And while they make files throughout the semester, they'll be considering effective, organized file management. So the first application, the core level program that we have students look at, is the audio MIDI setup. And I have that currently running. And it's in this core level program that you can actually define what the interface is that you'll be using for your particular music making activity. And in this case, I'm running the audio interface, Propellerhead's Balance, and it's providing the functionality to the operating system, and we can see that it has 2 inputs and it has 2 outputs. And in the case of today's presentation, that's in fact what we're sending to the house system for you to listen to the presentation on. I also have the keyboard that I was showing you there in the slide that's in the classroom in the Haviland building, and that would be part of a student's activity to look at the MIDI configuration and see that in fact the device is being recognized in their laptop. And Mike has asked me to pull cables out and see if this is going to work, which is always tricky, but I'm going to try it. So what will happen is if I disconnect the Oxygen 8, what you're going to see is that the recognition of this peripheral device that's connected to the USB port of the Macintosh, this icon is going to gray out. So I'm going to physically disconnect the cable. and it has indeed grade. So that means that it's offline, but the operating system still remembers that that device was used. So when it's physically connected, it should come online again, as you saw there. So we're good to go. And that's the kind of diagnostics we'd have students do for their first activity and then repeat it throughout their different music production exercises in the semester. So this really becomes an important proficiency that they're aware of in terms of their production skill set, preparing your system prior to creating music.
Great, thank you, Kai. And I think one of the things that we try and stress in the class is that the skills that you're learning here are practical. They're things that you're going to need to know immediately how to use things. So if we switch back to my machine for just a second, I want to just run you through the projects that we do in MTEC-111. And there are 3 projects, and really the grading for the course is really focused on students successfully completing these 3 projects. The first thing that we want to do, manage Berkeley coursework, and the first thing we want to do is we ask a student to produce a lead sheet in GarageBand. So the idea here is that they are taking an existing piece of music and producing it. They don't have to compose anything. They don't have to arrange anything. All they need to do is to be able to enter some notes into the computer. Most of the time we use a tune called Cantaloupe Island by Herbie Hancock, thinking, of course, that that's a pretty easy melody to play on a keyboard with one finger. So drummers, guitar players, everybody at some level would be capable of just producing this piece of work. They submit that as a project file. The second thing we do is we take a look at Reason. And in Reason, the prime reason we're, no pun intended, using Reason is to give people the opportunity to look and see what synthesizers actually look like, what they are, how they're used. In GarageBand and in many current music production programs designed for entry-level students, you really don't see the synthesizer. You'll see this is a piano, this is a saxophone. You have no idea what that is, but we want to, in Reason, familiarize people with some of the basic elements of what electronic instruments are. So they'll do a project in Reason, and finally they'll produce a piece of music in Pro Tools using MIDI and audio. So we're asking everybody to produce a demo, either of themselves playing or something they've written, something they could have a friend sing on, whatever they need to do, and that's their final project. So I think what Kai's going to do with us now is he's going to show us a couple things in GarageBand, which is really kind of the entry-level place that we start with MIDI recording and editing. So Kai?
All right, so thanks, Mike. So we've chosen GarageBand as a good starting point. It's one of the applications that comes with the Macintosh iLife suite. And in that, we're looking for students to try to get a good sense of what the MIDI protocol is. So we want them to, as outcomes, to be able to identify MIDI message types. And in terms of musicality, we'd like to think that we can support other core level classes across the curriculum where they're studying arranging, so we're reinforcing some of the concepts of musical form. And as a primary objective, that they would get core sequencing skills. So I'm going to open a GarageBand session that I have here. And the initial discussion, initial demonstration might have students examining the basic message types. And here you can see that on this particular region, I'll just zoom in a bit so we can see it. We have a single event, and that might have been drawn in or recorded in, and I'll just play it so you can hear it. This is a drum sound source, a drum kit. So I've just got one bar loop going. So we might talk about what you can do after you've entered a MIDI message, a basic message like a note on. Well, in terms of a grid-based approach, you'd be thinking about, well, you can actually move it in time. So you can choose a different location in the bar. So if I turn on the click, you'll hear that we now have a different location. So we'll discuss the idea of moving events against a timeline. We may also discuss the idea of turning the original instrument sound that's being played back to be triggered differently. So I move the event here if I select it. And now we have a rim shot. So to get the point across that MIDI is, in terms of a protocol, independent from the sound source. You can change the sound source, but still have the same information or manipulate the basic message type. So that would give you an idea of the kind of editing we might work on. However, we want to go a little bit beyond that. Even though this is an introductory class, we want to look at what it means to consider MIDI as a performance tool. And in that regard, the idea of recording in real time and adding expression through the type of controllers that are available on a standard USB keyboard device like this. So as you can, I don't know if you can see this, but if I just sort of pull it up, I've got a pitch bend wheel, I have a mod wheel which will generate controller data, and we have knobs that can generate CC messages, control change messages, and all of those can be used to manipulate the basic note message to provide expression. So that would be something we'd be thinking about trying to demonstrate and have the student themselves explore that. So I'm going to try this with the example, the Cantaloupe Island session. So go down to my sound. So one of the things about GarageBand and most DAWs is that they can present the MIDI messages in a conventional notation format. So let's have that visible while I play in this part. And you can sing along if you want, but it's okay. Here we go. So that would be a basic level performance, and that'd be great if students are managing to do that. I mean, a lot are not keyboard players. We're encouraging them to consider slowing the tempo down, go for accuracy, and then try to build up your skill set. And of course, the college is supporting the principle of all students to be able to have keyboard proficiency. So this is, again, trying to feed into the core level experience of the student, an all-rounded approach. So that would be the first take, note level, but let's introduce the same line but with the addition of controllers to add expression. So I'll just check that the performance capability is set up. Okay, here we go. So I'll play the same line but add expression. Okay, so thank you very much. And let's just cycle over there so it's ready to go. Okay, so we've got two different takes, and in terms of notation, obviously, if we were to look at the first one, it looks more accurate with those eighth note lines. That being said, that would be for maybe exporting as a actually, what you can do with GarageBand is you could open it up in Logic, and then you could refine the part and then print out from the full-blown score edge in that application. But that would give the student the idea of a reconstructed melody line. So the idea of looking at the take here with those ornaments, it does look a bit strange. But the objective here is not so much to have it as standard notation, but to look at those message types that were defining the expressive quality and edit them as needed. So if I go over to the piano roll, which is the common method for displaying MIDI events in a DAW graphically against the timeline, we can see the notes against the timeline, but we can also see the control change messages and pitch bend that was applied to add expression. And that's where we can introduce trying to develop more musicality and encourage the student to go further. So if you look at modulation, you can see that I have, in fact, those lines that can then be edited and refined to really build in an expressive part. From there, we can further edit as needed. So that's what I wanted to show, Michael.
Okay, great. So I think one of the things that we want to try and do in these classes, it's Berklee College of Music. So instead of just showing people how to push buttons and enter notes, we really, in the context of these classes, really try and talk about how to use these things musically. So we'll want to take a look at Reason and what we just saw in GarageBand. I'll show you a couple things while Kai is setting up for the next thing we're going to do with Pro Tools, and we're going to have a special guest artist for you today. So one of the things that students first coming to technology think about is that the computer can make any sound whatsoever. So let's say if they want a string section, they might go into GarageBand and say strings, and they play something, and they'll say, well, I don't know if that sounds like strings or not, but they don't really know how the sound was made. Once we get into Reason, we can see some different types of synthesizers, different types of instruments. And when we take a look at subtractor, we can see very simply that this type of instrument, it's a subtractive synthesizer. It looks very similar to many different types of classic instruments. We can see that this is a subtractive synthesizer. This is going to be good for electronic sounds, for synthesizer sounds. But you're really not going to use that instrument to create authentic acoustic sounds. So if I go and take a look at now a sampler, we can understand, yes, okay, this is a different type of instrument. It's really based on a different type of technology. And with this type of instrument, you can choose to make music that is more close to acoustic sources. The other thing we want to take a look at is in Reason, there are a number of really great instruments that produce really unique types of sounds. So sounds that have motion, things that have sonic interest to them. So for many students coming into MTEC-111, they hear many sounds in recordings on record, on MP3s, but they don't quite know how they're made. And I think when students start working with Reason, they begin to see the wealth of possibilities out there using electronic sounds and hopefully begin to correlate some of those things with music that they're hearing, music that they're listening to. I think in particular, this is pretty well served when we're talking about urban music and the types of sounds that are used there. And of course, you might think that in a school of music, a dirty word was drum machine, but in fact, this is a very valid tool that many people are using to produce all sorts of musical ideas. And so we do in fact talk about the idea of, a drum machine in here. So in MTEC-111, we really cover a variety of sound creation technologies, a variety of things. So we don't expect a student at the end of the day to be able to program a synthesizer. So if we're looking at Subtractor, there's a number of things they could be tweaking, and some students we find will in fact do this. But we do not expect them to go into an instrument like Thor and edit this and create their own sounds. And in that case, if people are interested in doing that, they can be an EPD major. So Kai, why don't you give us a quick look at Pro Tools. We're getting pretty close to wrapping things up. And I think Kyle will show us some recording, and we'll move pretty close to a conclusion.
Okay, so thanks, Mike. So Pro Tools, like every contemporary DAW, does ship with its own software instruments, and we indeed cover those on an introductory level. So again, Pro Tools, like Michael just demonstrated with Reason, has its own pattern-based generator. And has a number of melodic bass instruments, a vacuum which emulates analog circuitry. And actually a good sounding DB3 software organ emulation. Triggering that with my touchpad. So there are other areas of software exploration available, but today's focus on Pro Tools is its capability as a de facto standard for audio production, and I'm going to select these, hide them so you can see what we're doing. And this relates to one of the activities that students will be doing in the second half of the semester, where they're looking at audio production. And the objective here would be to try to strengthen the students' understanding of basic audio recording and editing, mix skills, and also identify methods for music distribution. And this actually covers a number of lessons, so it's not all done in one lesson, obviously. So what we're going to do here is look at an audio recording workshop that is in actually this week's lesson. So for that, we're going to introduce Natalia Fernandez to help with this, who's currently studying in MTEC-111. So I'm going to set up the microphone. Natalia, this is your first time in Boston, isn't it?
Well, I came here for the audition, but I guess first time living in Boston.
How do you find it?
I love the city. I love being able to walk everywhere and take the train. It's all a new experience for me because I'm from Florida, so.
Sunny state, huh? All right, so we've already prepared the backing track. So what we're going to do now is look at Pro Tools' fast, efficient workflow for laying down a vocal track. You feel ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so of course this is not a controlled studio environment, but I think you'll get the idea of what we do in class. Okay. Sure?
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Ready? Okay.
This thing called love, I can't handle it. This thing called love, I must get around to it. I ain't ready. Crazy little thing called love.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Natalie, I really liked how you approached the line, especially that phrase at the end, the hook.
Yeah, crazy little thing called love.
Yeah, where you took that higher melody. One thing now, maybe you could do a second take and we'll look at some rhythmic variation.
Okay.
And maybe try a lower part on that melody, for the melody on that last
Okay.
crazy little thing.
Sure.
Okay, so at this point, I'm going to shift over to Pro Tools playlisting view, where you actually set up tracks to record to, and new takes. So I'll add a new take, and we're going to try that again. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
This thing called love, I can't handle it. This thing called love, I must get around to it. I ain't ready. There's a little thing called love.
Yeah. So I think it would be really good if we kept the rhythmic change from that second take, but then use the higher melody. We could make a finished version like that.
Okay.
You think that's good?
That sounds good.
Okay. So now I'm going to do a basic edit that will comp these different takes together using the strongest elements from both. So what I was telling Natalie there is I liked the beginning phrase to the final hook, and then the hook from the first take. So the beginning phrase of the second take, and then the end phrase from the first take. So what I'm going to do is use pre-recorded tracks that we did in the studio so you can actually hear the better fidelity. This obviously would not be an appropriate type of studio production, the vocal takes, but these are the same takes that we did yesterday. So I'm going to select this. That's your rhythmic interpretation from the second take.
Yep.
And I'm going to move it up. There we have it. And then your higher melody from the first take is here, correct?
Yep.
Okay, and I'll move that up. And now we have a finished comped vocal. And just in case there's a little bit of clicks or pops, I'll put a little crossfade between those and render this. Do that. And we should be good to go. So let's have a listen to that, see what you think. I'll start from here.
I can't handle it, this thing called love. I must get around to it, I ain't ready. Crazy little thing called love.
Sound
like
good?
all one take.
Yeah? Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you, Kai.
Okay.
And I think one of the things that we're trying to do in this class is have dialogues with students, between students and faculty, about really not just recording, but listening to their performances and thinking about what they're doing musically. And I know in a number of classes what we'll do is a student will go up and start singing a little bit tentatively and say, you know, we can say to the student, close your eyes and imagine there are 10,000 people in front of you. And when that student cranks it out after that, it's a really important learning lesson. So I think in MTEC-111, one of the things that we really want to do is kind of bring home the idea that you're a musician. You're using these tools to make your statement, to kind of convey your art. And overall, this is really the goal of the course. This is what we've been trying doing. Technology, as everybody is aware, is a moving target, so this course is constantly under review. Anything that comes up, we're looking at. 2 years ago, students were submitting their final projects as CDs. Now they're posting them to SoundCloud. And so as these technologies evolve, we're really trying to go with that. So, thank you so much, and I think we may have just a few minutes for questions, and happy to hear your questions on anything. Camille says one. Mark Simos, I know this is going to be a tough one. When Mark's at the mic.
What is the meaning of life? No, great
Oh.
presentation. You know, encountering the range of students that are coming to the school now, it would seem like one of the real challenges making this a kind of a gateway class that all students pass through is the tremendous variability in tech experience that the students bring to the school. So is there a test out for this class? Do you have a kind of a...
Absolutely,
yeah.
yeah. So we've always had a test out for the class, and at this point, it's a pretty stiff test out. You really have to know something about music technology to actually get the B that would be required to test out. We give a credit by exam for the course. It would be nearly impossible for us to give everybody any proficiency. So the assumption would be that if somebody comes in and they can get a B on this exam, they have probably gotten their feet wet, their toes wet, and they'll be able to function at Berkeley. So that's a really good point. And to address the issue of the broad range of students coming in, I think one of the things that we like to do in the class is trying to build a bit of a community where students who are more experienced with the technology will work with students who have less experience. And it's the first year, everybody's here to make friends, everybody's here to learn from each other. So as much as we can foster that in the context of the class, we feel that's an important part of what we do. Great. And thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Camille.
Okay, thank you all very much. Again, this will be posted on berkeley.edu, Academic Affairs. So I really appreciate it. And for all of our partner schools and those with articulation agreements, your students will, of course, not be required to take the course here. So we want to make sure that they're prepared for everything that will face them after this class, all the technology that they'll have afterwards. Thank you again. Special thanks to our presenters and to our singer. Thank you.